You're listening to Short History Shorts audio, where history speaks louder than images. In the early 5th century BC, Rome was still young, fragile, and emerging from the shadow of monarchy. The fledgling republic had recently expelled its kings, replacing tyranny with a system of elected magistrates, yet its legitimacy was far from secure. Across the plains of Latium, old allegiances still lingered, and the Latin League, an alliance of neighbouring cities, watched Rome's bold political experiment with wary eyes. Among those most embittered by Rome's transformation was Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, the deposed seventh and final king of Rome. Stripped of his throne, exiled and scorned, Tarquinius became a symbol of royal vengeance, and he was not done fighting. Rallying the Latin League and backed by powerful allies such as the city of Tusculum and its dictator Octavius Mamilius, Tarquinius sought not only to reclaim his crown, but to crush the republic in its infancy. What followed was one of the most storied confrontations in Rome's early history, the Battle of Lake Regillus. The details of this battle, recorded by Livian Dionysius of Halicarnassus, straddle the line between history and myth, between fact and legend. What is clear is that around 496 BC, Roman forces led by the dictator Aulus Postumius Albus marched to meet the Latin coalition near the small volcanic lake known as Regillus, situated between Rome and Tusculum. The appointment of Postumius as dictator, an emergency power granted only in times of dire threat, underscored the seriousness with which the Senate viewed this confrontation. Alongside him was his master of horse, Titus Ebutius Elva, a cavalry commander who would become central to the unfolding drama. The Latin League, meanwhile, was not only militarily formidable, but possessed a deep emotional bond to its cause. Tarquinius represented not just a bid for kingship restored, but a rallying cry against Rome's defiance, a rejection of the Republic's ambition to dominate Latium. As both armies arrayed themselves on the battlefield, the tension was immense. Roman infantry in traditional formation faced Latin counterparts, equally disciplined and battle-hardened. The cavalry units, often decisive in early engagements, lined the flanks, their spears poised and horses restless. It was in this crucible of anticipation that the first clash erupted, loud, chaotic and brutal. Early in the battle, both generals, Postumius and Mamilius, were nearly killed, setting a tone of high-stakes desperation. In one particularly famous episode, Titus Ebutius and Mamilius faced off in single combat. The charge was dramatic. Ebutius, loyal Roman commander, bearing down with spear levelled. Mamilius, kingly in stature, meeting the threat head-on. Their lances shattered on impact, and both men were thrown from their horses. Wounded, they withdrew, but the moment remained a flashpoint for both armies. The symbolic collision between the old monarchy and the new republic had manifested not just in political theory, but in visceral violence. As the melee intensified, another legendary episode occurred. The Roman standard-bearer, amid the chaos, found himself retreating. Dictator Postumius, reportedly appalled, threw himself in front of the retreating troops and swore that anyone who fled would be cut down by Roman swords rather than enemy spears. The brutal motivation worked. Roman lines held and surged forward. According to legend, it was then that the gods intervened. Castor and Pollux, the divine twins, are said to have appeared on the battlefield, fighting on the side of Rome. Mounted on white steeds, they charged through enemy lines, bringing fear and confusion to the Latin ranks. Whether taken as myth or metaphor, this moment underscores the deeply religious and superstitious mindset of early Roman soldiers. Divine favour was not just comfort, it was a weapon. Meanwhile, the Latin forces, though still holding ground, began to falter. Octavius Mamilius, despite his valour, was struck down by a Roman prince, one of the sons of Marcus Valerius, a hero of early Rome. His death dealt a psychological blow to the Latins, and the cohesion of their army began to unravel. Tarquinius, elderly and wounded, could no longer command. His dream of returning to power dissolved in the dust and blood of the battlefield. By late afternoon, the Latins were in full retreat. Roman cavalry pursued them with savage intent, and the marshes near the lake became a killing field. Postumius, declaring the day a divine victory, promised to build a temple to Castor and Pollux in the Roman Forum. The victory at Lake Regillus was not just military, it was political and symbolic. Rome had not only defended itself from the threat of restoration, it had signalled to the rest of Latium that the Republic was here to stay. In the years that followed, the temple was constructed, and each year Romans celebrated the battle in religious festivals. The memory of Regillus was woven into the cultural DNA of the Republic. It became a tale of sacrifice, discipline, and divine favour, core values that would echo across Roman history. Yet even as we celebrate Rome's victory, the battle reveals the fragility of its early years. The Republic was not inevitable. It was contested and almost undone. The legacy of Lake Regillus is not merely in what happened, but in what could have happened. Had the Latins prevailed, had Tarquinius returned, the course of Roman history may have shifted dramatically. The battle reminds us that Rome's rise was not a steady ascent, but a precarious gamble. The Republic was forged in uncertainty and sealed in blood. The aftermath of the Battle of Lake Regillus reshaped Rome's relationship with the Latin League. The decisive Roman victory crushed the immediate hopes of Tarquinius and his allies, but it also laid the foundation for a new diplomatic reality. Rather than dismantle the Latin cities, Rome pursued a strategic settlement. In the years that followed, the Fides Cassianum, or Cassian Treaty, was established, a mutual defence pact between Rome and the Latin League. It formalised an alliance, stipulating that both parties would share spoils of war and act together in military campaigns. This treaty did not erase tensions or rivalries, but it marked the beginning of Roman integration of its neighbours, not by outright conquest, but by alliance and gradual absorption. The Cassian Treaty reflected a shift in Roman statecraft. Where once kings ruled through force, the Republic would increasingly rule through systems of law, diplomacy, and calculated power-sharing, yet the scars of Regillus remained. The memory of nearly losing the Republic to a restorationist monarch left a permanent mark on Roman political culture. Kingship became a toxic word, and any individual who seemed too ambitious, too powerful, was viewed with suspicion. Centuries later, this suspicion would haunt figures like Julius Caesar. The ghost of Tarquinius Superbus lingered in Roman memory, a warning of how easily liberty could slip back into tyranny. But beyond the politics, Regillus also forged a Roman identity grounded in sacrifice. The temple to Castor and Pollux, completed a few years later, became one of the most iconic structures in the Forum. Roman generals and politicians often spoke beneath its columns, invoking the divine twins who, legend said, had once galloped across the field of battle for the Republic. Whether they existed or not, Castor and Pollux became part of Rome's mythic narrative, a story of chosen people under divine protection. And in Rome, myth and memory were tools of state. Regillus also became a standard in Roman military law. It was not the largest battle Rome would ever fight, nor the most strategically significant in the grand scheme of empire, but it became a blueprint for courage and perseverance. Each time Rome faced internal dissent or external invasion, the example of Regillus was evoked. It taught Romans that unity in the face of betrayal could deliver salvation. It taught that loyalty to the Republic came before all else. Even Roman education would return to the story again and again. Livy, writing in the age of Augustus, framed Regillus as a moment of divine affirmation of the Republic. The poetic liberties he took were not merely for embellishment, they were cultural construction. Rome's story was built from moments like this, where reality and legend blurred for the sake of ideology. The symbolic defeat of Tarquinius gave birth to the Roman vision of destiny, resilient, chosen, unyielding. And so the Battle of Lake Regillus remains one of the great foundational legends of the Republic. It is a reminder that history is not always about what can be verified, but about what a people choose to remember. For Rome, remembering Regillus meant remembering who they were. Not subjects of a king, but citizens of a republic, forged in the fires of conflict, guided by divine providence and destined for greatness. Even as modern historians debate the accuracy of the battle's details, the power of the story remains intact. The battlefield may be quiet now, lost beneath modern terrain and memory, but the echo of horses' hooves, of clashing steel, and of a republic nearly undone, still reverberates through the ages. That echo reminds us that the roots of Rome were watered in struggle, and that from that struggle an empire would one day rise.